Multiple regions is one of the most beloved concepts in the Pokemon fan project scene. I mean, who wouldn't want to go on a second adventure with the team they poured love and effort into during the first? Although, in today's video, I'm not here to show you a fan game with just 2 regions. By the name of Silver Chronicles, you'll travel through Johto, Kanto, and even the Orange Islands. So, as per usual, I'll be showcasing the game's new story, Pokemon battles, world design, and quality of life features before giving each of them a final score at the end of the video. And in case you were worried, this will of course be a spoiler-free review. So without further ado, my name is Ari, and let's get started. Like most Pokemon games, your journey begins as a brand new trainer, ready to leave home and conquer the gym challenge. While there isn't anything wrong with that formula, I have to be upfront and honest that a majority of the Johto arc is mostly the same as the originals. There are some additions to spice up the plot, but nothing crazy that I would say truly separates itself from the canon material. Where the story does actually start to take a turn though, is once you defeat the Pokemon League. Rather than going straight to Kanto and wiping out its gym leaders in a few hours, you'll participate in the Pokemon World Cup. The Pokemon battles were of course fun, yet I feel the storytelling side of this event was pretty lackluster. I won't spoil the details, but 90% of it was wake up, go to the arena, battle your opponent, go back to the hotel, and repeat about 5 times. Where the story finally picks up is ironically when you get to Kanto, which I say is ironic because it's the region that usually has like no plot whatsoever. And it was actually pretty good. You do begin by just chasing Team Rocket around the region, yet it does lead into some quite unique story elements I didn't expect to be explored. There is one thing though that personally left me feeling a bit disappointed with the overall story. Something that doesn't have anything to do with a specific plot point. Like I said at the beginning, your journey through Johto won't feel very different from the original games. This might not seem like a big deal, but having to go through at the bare minimum 8 hours of gameplay before anything really interesting or unique happens in the story was not very fun. Don't get me wrong, the new story once you reach it is pretty good, just not one that I think entirely justifies that long of a build-up. So if that doesn't sound like it'll bother you personally, I think it's a story you'll certainly enjoy. But I know that most of us are primarily playing these games for the Pokemon battles. A good story can be fun and is always welcome, yet a bad gameplay experience will almost always leave you asking yourself if the game is even worth playing. Which is why I'm happy to say that the battles in Silver Chronicles are handled pretty well. Since you start in Johto, I did expect most of the fights to be a mix of somewhat challenging or brain-dead easy. Instead, however, every boss trainer was equipped with a full team, with gym leaders even having access to Dynamax. Even though most of their Pokemon underleveled their aces, these battles were no joke compared to those of a lot of fan games I've recently played. I don't think they ever reached the level of the more advanced difficulty hacks, but this definitely isn't a game where you can get away with using less than 6 yourself. Although, when it comes to increasing a Pokemon game's challenge level, I've always had the opinion that the quality of the resources provided to the player must also be increased. Maybe not to the same extent as the bosses, I just feel that getting access to more cool things yourself has always been a core aspect of harder fan games. And for the most part, I think Silver Chronicles does a pretty good job with that. Before you even challenge the first leader, you'll be handed the Dynamax band yourself that can be used during gym battles. On top of that, the Pokemon variety has been updated with some later generation options, and most trainers dropped a good amount of money. But one thing I really need to criticize is the lack of really any Pokemon-based quality of life. Even with the older EXP share given quite early, it was a bit of a struggle keeping more than 6 Pokemon up to par. Ignoring my usual desire for the EXP all, this is a piece of criticism that I think really matters. To deal with the harder bosses, I'm going to need more XP than what Johto's trainers can provide me. Additionally, having a wide variety of rotating team members makes the multi-region experience infinitely better. Overall, I think the battles are really fun and the challenge level is handled well, but I also think that some way to gain EXP much easier and faster would greatly benefit the game. Something else I wanted to give some attention to is the art direction. For the most part, the game mimics the map design of Gold and Silver, opposed to the remakes. Obviously, this wasn't a horrible decision, I just think it's one that left a lot of maps feeling a bit emptier than they should have. In my opinion, the further up you go in Pokemon's art styles, the more detail each map needs in order to meet a certain standard. On the contrary, the overworld encounters do somewhat combat this issue, and at least for me, didn't impact my computer's performance. So, despite my nitpicks, the first two regions look fine, and alongside the removal of HMs, are very easy to traverse. Where the map design did kind of bother me though, is in the Orange Islands, a region that doesn't have any official in-game replicas to mimic the locations of. Traveling through it, there were three noticeable issues that bothered me to a good extent. The first one is that a lot of maps felt incredibly empty. Most towns had only about 2 to 4 NPCs walking about, while almost every route lacked them entirely, besides an enemy trainer or two. Secondly, nearly every one of these routes had a pretty identical layout. Either A, it's a sandy path with tall grass, or B, a waterway with a patch of empty land or two. I get that traveling between a dozen small islands does limit your creativity, yet I still feel there was a bit more that could have been done. Lastly, the mix of tiles from different art or even generational styles didn't do the more detailed maps any justice. This one's not nearly as important as the first two, but I do feel it's worth mentioning from my own experience that mashing together tile sets from artists with very different styles can lead to the world looking a bit worse than it deserves to be. Although I will acknowledge that a lot of what I just said isn't that big of a deal. As someone who takes a lot of pride in level design, I do feel the need to criticize it where I can, yet it isn't something that'll ruin the game, nor will it take away from the rest of the content I previously complimented. With my final scores on screen, and feel free to pause and read them, I'll be giving Silver Chronicles a personal score of 6.4 out of 10. Now, I say personal because as much as I wanted to showcase this game, I think I realized halfway through that it just was not for me. If you're like myself, who prefers games with more attention to storytelling and visual detail, then it's not one I can suggest. However, if you don't really care for much of that, and just want to travel through multiple regions with an insane number of Pokemon battles, then this is a game you will absolutely enjoy. Especially considering that the Hoenn region is planned for a future update, I think Silver Chronicles is easily going to become one of the longest Pokemon fan projects ever created. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe for more Pokemon fan games and ROM hacks. Thank you to my channel members for their continuous support, and have a nice rest of your day.